A little disclaimer before you watch the video. I filmed this on my laptop in the middle of the night, and I didn't see that sometimes my head is kind of cut off, so don't get distracted by that. Also, I say the word frustrating a lot, and I'm sorry for that. So I read this book called After that maybe a few of you know. At least it was in a lot of bookshops, like right on the top, right in the front window, and it says like for fans of 50 Shades of Grey. So I thought, well, that sounds great, I really want to read it. Well, not, but I read it anyway because I wanted to know what was behind it, but I knew it was going to be bad, but I did it anyway. First thing first, After by Todd is actually, or was actually, a story published on Wattpad. Wattpad is a website or like platform where you can publish stories. Mostly fanfics are on there, and this was actually a 1D fanfic that for some reason was published by an actual publisher, and like I can't like wrap my head around that. Like, I don't know, it got a lot of hype, and in the end it got published, and I don't know, I kind of had a lot of expectations like hearing that, because I thought, okay, it's just a Wattpad story, but if it gets published it definitely has to be like good, doesn't it? But it was actually such a typical Wattpad story. I definitely read better books on Wattpad than this one, and they didn't get published. So, to kind of structure this rant, because I can't really structure my thoughts on myself, I try to contain myself at some level. But yeah, I'm going to start with plot, and I don't know why this book actually has like over 600 pages, because the plot is not really that extensive. Like, we have Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and then After by Anna Todd on this side, and they both have the same length, and that's kind of like paradox to me, because there's literally not a lot happening in After. It's just so repetitive, it's painful. And basically the plot is that we have Tessa, this really goody good girl who hasn't any kind of experience, but yeah, she starts college, and then through her punker, rebellious roommate Steph, she meets this whole group of people who are like really edgy, and one of them is Hardin, a complete asshole, and they kind of start to have this hate-love relationship. Never gets really past that, because sometimes they still hate each other, but they actually love each other. But that's basically the plot. And spoiler for all of you who still want to read that ridiculous lumber, in the end it turns out that it was actually all about a bet that Hardin had with Zane. I think he's called Zed, but he's actually Zane. So Zane, that like whoever kind of sleeps with Tessa first, because she's still a virgin, and that gets like highly sexualized in this book, which is so frustrating. But that's just like one little thing, and that I'm going to talk about later. But yeah, they have a bet, and Tessa finds that out, and she's like really angry and stuff, and then the first book ends. But I'm really not going to continue reading the series, because it probably just repeat itself over and over again, and in the end they're getting married or something like that and have 2.5 kids. Just plot wise, this is so bad. And I mean, like, for a novel this long, this is actually kind of typical for a Wattpad story, because like on Wattpad it's like online, ongoing. You'd probably, like, most Wattpad stories are continuing onwards and onwards, and you maybe post a chapter each week or every other day or something like that. So this is why after is that long, probably. But they didn't really do a lot of editing in there. Like, there's so much redundancy in this book, it's ridiculous, and there is so much that they could have edited out, and they didn't do it. And yeah, I'm really, really frustrated about this. But I'm actually frustrated about everything in this book, so what a surprise. So, alright, continuing with, I don't know, language. Continue with language. So I have a lot of beautiful quotes there that I want to read to you, and that honestly really frustrated me. What a surprise. So overall, the book is not written that well. Like, first I thought maybe that this story is that popular because maybe it's just like a kind of cliche story, but the writing is actually really beautiful. I mean, like, there are Wattpad stories that have like this really distinct language and this really distinct style, and that would have been okay with me, but it's actually not written like greatly, like not at all. This could have been written by, I don't know, a 12-year-old. I'm not sure, maybe Todd was that young. I mean, that's okay, but I feel like they should have edited more when they actually published it into an actual physical book. So yeah. So one thing that really stuck out to me was like sometimes a really weird sentence structure and like way of phrasing stuff. So for example, she says at page 30, I think it is, I hadn't realized my mind had wandered to the rude boy. And that alone, like the rude boy, just this phrasing just bothered me so much. And there are more of these. For example, on page like 107, she says, "In the little time that I have known this frustrating man that is Harden Scott." Like, that frustrating man. Oh god, it's just so cringy. Then there are, like, I don't have a problem with Tessa being a nerd and loving books. I really like that, but she's just so obnoxious about it and kind of pretentious, and just all her comments really annoy me. And the thing is that I guess my problem with it is that I really don't like the way like her love for books is described or written. For example, when she is in Harden's room, which she doesn't know, she sees all the books that are on his shelf, and she's like, "Whoever owns this collection is impressive. There are many classics, a whole range of different types of books, including all of my favorites." And it's like, okay, Tessa, great that it like coincidentally includes all of your favorites. And also when she talks about Pride and Prejudice, she's like, "We dive into Pride and Prejudice, a magical book that I wish everyone would read." Like, oh, please just stop, Tessa. Then we have just really weird use of words. For example, her saying, when she like hears that Harden is in a fraternity, she's like, "I would have never guessed that Harden could be a part of an organized social group." Like, what is that kind of, like, what like 18-year-old thinks like, "Oh yeah, fraternity is an organized social group." Like, please. Like, of course, maybe Anna Todd wanted her to seem like, I don't know, like this weird nerdy girl who like doesn't really know what a fraternity is, but it just sounds so bad. Like, ooh. Um, and then let's get into the language stuff from like all their sexy times, because that also got me cringing. So, first thing, she whimpers at the loss of contact, which just got me cringing all over. Like, it's not like a sex scene with Harden, but she says, "As I put my fork into my mouth, the metal reminds me of Harden's lip ring." Right. Yeah, we just leave that there. So she's like, his mouth continuing its gentle assault. And I just thought, is that a good thing? Like a gentle assault? So assault doesn't really sounds that great to me. It's like this really forceful thing. So is there a kind of gentle assault? And would you like that? Like, and on page 194 we have the all-loving sentence, that is, "I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding because it had to be in there." So this is something that is also language, but also like sheer dumbness, in my opinion. I don't know what Todd thought about this, but I just read it to you and you can have your thoughts. So, "I have never made anyone else come before. My chest heats, filling with a strange new sense that I'm now one step closer to being a woman." So, like, again, this phrasing is just really cringy, but also this is just like so sexist, heteronormative again, just that she like made this man come is like her being a woman. So it's her talks to, I don't know, pleasure a man to, because she's a woman. It's just, oh. Then there's this one sentence where Tessa finally suggests having sex, and her thoughts are, "I want Harden in the most primal, deep way possible." Also, she describes Harden's body, like, while he's under the shower, as the water covers him, making his tattoo skin glisten, which really reminded me of like Twilight. Another sentence that really made me cringe, which is again this like kind of weird adjective game that she's playing, and she's like, I think she had sex for the first time with Harden, and she thinks about all the women he had sex with before, and she's like, "They are just that, his past. I only care about this beautiful, flawed man who just made love for the first time in his life." We have like sometimes like really weird transitions between scenes, and a lot of the scenes are just like I said already in the plot, they are like really redundant and really like, I don't know, everyday stuff, which is like, again, this typical like fanfic thing. But the transitions are sometimes like feeling like they were written for like a, I don't know, a story you wrote in 4th grade. And for example, she has class, the class is beginning, that's the end of the sentence, and the next sentence is, "That's all for today. I will see you again on Wednesday," Professor Hill says, and dismisses us. Like, I don't know, it's just this weird phrasing again that kind of gets me off. Lenton leaves the girl talk and goes to the other room to finish watching a football game he's recorded. And that's just like plain sexist. And it's just like, again, such a weird thing. Like, there's also sentences like, "My mind travels to Harden again and I stare out of the window," which is just like really dramatic. And then there's this weird thing that she only kissed like 2 boys before. She kissed Harden, and that was, of course, Noor, her boyfriend, which I'm going to get into later. But we also have Johnny. And Yeah, she's like, I figured Johnny from elementary school doesn't count, especially since he tasted like glue. It's just like there was so many times that I just commented facepalm on these quotes that I highlighted. Um, there's also again kind of like a trope sentence in here where she's like, "My heart stops, literally stops. It stops beating." And it's like, no, it doesn't stop, Tessa. Like, you still live. Like, what a shame, but you still live. And then there's again this kind of like redundancy part. Um, and this is, but this is also part of language because it's just such a random thing in this book in general that it just really stood out to me, and that was just so weird. So they are having dinner at some kind of restaurant, and then this sentence comes, "The food is delicious," all caps. And then I go for the chicken and Hardin chooses the steak, and I'm just like, why are you giving me this information, Tessa? Like, it's not like it's important what kind of meat you're eating. I don't know. It's just like, at least you got different things from Hardin and he let you choose you this time. But yeah, great. Like, I'm so happy that your food is delicious, but why is this sentence in this book? Both Tessa and Hardin actually have a problem with misusing, I guess, mental illnesses for their arguments and or like in general. And so the scene that really troubled me at first, where I like actually saw it, was in chapter 20 something, so quite in the beginning. And Hardin is in Tessa's room, and everything on her desk and stuff is really neat, and I don't know, she just likes it that way. And Hardin actually asks her, "Are you OCD or something?" And I just hate that people are using OCD as kind of like an adjective for a person that is really neat and orderly, and that's just like, I don't know, kind of normalizing an actual mental illness that is really harmful for the people who are suffering from it. And I think the worst thing actually is Tessa's answer to it, because she answers, "No, Hardin, not everyone's crazy because they just like things a certain way." And I think that's the worst answer she could have give, because she actually saying that people who have OCD are crazy. Calling them crazy is just not great. Really not great, Tessa. Like, you had better moments. Not a lot, but you had better moments. Alright, so now that we are done with structure and language and plot, I'm going to get into the characters in kind of like a more detailed way. Starting out with Tessa, and I try to structure this also into kind of like chapters of her flaws. So bear with me. So we have Tessa. Tessa is 18. She graduated from high school and now started college, which was always her dream. And she's really like nerdy. She loves school. She was always like an A+ student. And she has this single mother who's kind of controlling. I get into this a bit later. And she has this really cutesy boyfriend called Noah, and they are waiting until marriage for all that steamy stuff. And I don't know, it seems like she kind of wants friends, but she's kind of shy, but she only wants friends that are like her, which like I kind of gather from the 1,000 times she's just so judgmental about everyone who's not like her. And this is the first thing that really gets like really pisses me off about Tessa. She's just so judgmental. She's like, for example, I thought I could be friends with Steph, but with her choice of friends and late nights, I'm not sure anymore. Or like, for example, about Han, like she says, why is he so rude? If anything, he should be grateful that I'm not judging him. And she's just so judging him the whole time. It's the worst. And like, she hates people who, like, I don't know, dress a certain way. She finds people who have tattoos and piercings really, like, unlikable and, like, rude in general. Like, because they have tattoos and piercings, they need to be rude. She's always judging the girls' wardrobe. So Steph and Molly, I think they're called, like to dress a bit more revealing, and like it's their choice. Like, let them have fun. Like, if you're not having fun, let them having fun. But she's always like really slut shaming them. Before it, what's really frustrating for me is that she thinks like she can only be friends with people who don't have these characteristics. So, for example, she's at this party and she thinks, what surprises me is that no one else I see is covered in tattoos, like he, Nate, and Steph are. Maybe I can make some friends here tonight after all. So she's like, well, I'm here with these guys, but they can't be my friends because I have tattoos and piercings. So I need to find like probably straight, white, boring people who, I don't know, are more like me. That also cures when she first meets Landon, I think he's called. Oh yeah, she's like in like her first class is beginning, and like she's way too early. But there's this other guy. She's like, he's going to be my friend. She literally says that. She says, since this person obviously cares about being on time too, I sit next to him. He could be my first friend. I'm like, this sounds like kindergarten to me, but yeah. And then, like a while after that, she says, I decided now that he's someone whom I'd like to see more of. So another thing that kind of bothers me about her is that she's just so weird about her appearance. Like, she's this trope that she's actually like really beautiful, but feels like a grey mouse kind of girl, like a wallflower, and she dresses really like prudent and conservative. That's a quote from her. Like, she's like, I'm still wearing my conservative clothing. Whatever. So she literally says that her eyes are too large for her face and that she has like really big boobs and hips for a girl her age, which I think is really weird because at 18 you're mostly grown. But like later, like this kind of like body type and her appearance is like it attracts like every boy out there, especially Harden and Zed, and this kind of weird drunk guy that is like really rapey. But whatever. But that kind of pisses me off that she's like this huge trope of this actually beautiful girl. So the biggest thing that kind of bothers me about Tessa is that she says one thing and then does the other. So she is such an inconsistent person, and the worst part where this is shown is, of course, in her relationship with Harden, but that also includes her relationship with Noah. So I talked with you about Noah. He's like this really cutesy guy who's still in school. I think he's like 1 year younger than her, and she knew him like since they were like little kids, and they were always there for each other. And then they started dating, and her mother loves him, which is just so problematic in general. But the worst thing is that she straight on cheats on Noah so many times. It's ridiculous. So the first time she kisses Harden, she actually has this sentence, but my conscience loses and I crash my lips against his, catching him totally off guard. So this is her beginning of her journey to ignore her conscience. And she, like, straight on decides not to tell Noah that she kissed Harden. And like, this is really problematic because that's quite an unhealthy relationship you have going on there. For example, he says, I don't like Harden, and she's like, me neither. And then her mind says, but I know I'm lying. And like, this is just so frustrating and dishonest. Like, she knows she really likes Harden for some weird reason, and she actually acts on it. So why is she still with Noah? There are so many parts where she actually says, now that I met Harden, I actually know that I never loved Noah the way I love Harden. Like, and for example, she thinks, no, we just happened to kiss twice, and he took off my chores, and I was basically humping him, but we aren't messing around like regularly. And then she says, I have a boyfriend, remember? And I was like, oh, so now you have a boyfriend again? Like, 2 seconds ago you just basically ripped off Harden's shirt, but you have a boyfriend, so keep that in mind. And then after that she's like, oh, how could I do this to Noah again? And I was just thinking, well, it seems like you did that consciously, so it's not like you didn't have a free will while you were kissing Harden, like you were forced to. So the worst part is actually that in the end, Noah finds out about Tessa and Harden because Harden forces Tessa to tell Noah. And she was actually like, Noah visited her because she needed him, and she actually gets a call from like a friend of Harden's that Harden's in trouble or something like that. So she goes to Harden and actually like spends the night there while Noah was still like at her place. And then like Harden forces her to tell Noah that they have been a thing, like some kind of thing, because they are not dating and Harden would never be in a real relationship. But after that you think like, okay, at least the cheating part, it ended, it's alright. So it's still an unhealthy relationship, but at least Tessa is not a bitch anymore because she's cheating on Noah. But after that she has like this huge fight with Harden again, and and then she's like, well, I guess I get back to Noah because he was always my dear friend and he's always so stable and I can rely on him, and that's why I love him. So she's actually like planning on getting back with Noah, and Noah kind of seems okay with that, and she's planning on, I don't know, introducing Noah to Landon and his girlfriend, and it's just like this weird plotting, which is really playing with Noah's emotions, because we all know that Tessa is stuck on Harden even though she doesn't like it, whatever, but she knows that herself, so she's just emotionally abusing Noah for no reason, and I think that's actually the worst. And like while she's with Noah again, she actually starts things with Harden again, and there are like those really frustrating parts where she's like, and what will I tell Noah? He's waiting for me and I have his car. I can't believe I'm actually considered doing this. And I'm like, well, me neither, but it's like the 10th time that you let Noah alone and you are being with Harden and actually like doing stuff with Harden. So it's not like, it's not even emotional cheating, it's actually physical cheating. Like she does things with Harden that she hasn't done with Noah, which like it's okay because maybe Noah has his boundaries. But yeah, it's like so bad. And the worst thing is that it seems like she's only with Noah because of her mother. She actually says that when she's like, I don't know what it is that keeps me constantly afraid of losing Noah. Maybe it's my fear of my mother's reaction if you break up. So, like, is she just with Noah because of her mother? Because that's pathetic. Like, she's, like, really pathetic. But, yeah, so it kind of goes on that she's like, oh well, I'm dating Noah, but like I'm still doing this with Harden. Like I don't know what to do. I have such a bad conscience. And then my favorite part is when Noah shows up again, and I don't know, Noah and Harden start fighting again. This is just sorry. This keeps on forever, I guess. But she's like, I think you should go. And I'm like, yeah, Tessa, like, that's a good idea. Like, Harden is an asshole. And she's like, Noah, I said you should go. And she's basically throwing out Noah in order to hook up with Harden or something like that. It's just so much stuff. She's just the worst person and I hate it so much. Right. So her next thing that I really hate about her is that she's like really forgiving and actually finding like Harden's aggressive and controlling habits like really like sexy, and she enjoys it. Like sometimes she's like, okay, maybe he's a bit controlling, but I like it. It's like the worst thing you could convey to like a 13-year-old, saying, oh well, your boyfriend like knows everything about you and wants to control everything in life. Well, it's not weird, it's like really cute, isn't it? For example, he says like, I watch you, I mean not all the time, but I notice you more than you think. He tells me and my heart swells. I'm falling for him hard and fast. Like, that's stalking, my dear. Like, this is not beautiful. And in like chapter 71, she's like, despite the hint of possessiveness in his tone, his words are sweet and surprisingly humble for him. Like, it's just so weird. Like, Tessa actually realizes how pathetic she is. Like, there are actually parts where she's like, oh well, I'm so pathetic. There are parts where she's like, oh, he has this possessiveness in his tone. But she's like, well, it's alright. And I think that is my biggest problem with Tessa. I think I said the other thing was my biggest problem with Tessa, but like all of the things are such big problems with Tessa because Tessa is just the worst. And also really problematic is that she has so many thoughts about like Harden being aggressive and actually being afraid of that, but for her it's just this kind of like side effect of their relationship. Of course sometimes she's like, well, you have to contain yourself, you have to be like better than this, but for her it's just like, I don't know, a normal component of their relationship. For example, she's like, will he feel the same in the light of the day, or will he torture and taunt me for offering myself to him? Like, facepalm. Or like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what type of mood he will be in after we fall asleep in each other's arms. Like, she shouldn't be afraid of her partner after waking up, like, for his like mood swings or whatever. It's just so bad. And in general, like, both of them are kind of romanticizing their relationship. It's just plain and ridiculous. For example, like, they have this conversation in chapter 74, and it's like, she says, because we have only known each other for a few months and most of the time was spent fighting, I remind him. So, and then he answers, so we have done a pretty good job getting along this weekend. And then they both laugh, and it's like, we have such an unhealthy relationship, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it is, love. Amazing. And I was just like reading this and being just, again, really frustrated with them. In general, their relationship is just so unhealthy. It's the worst. What also really bothers me is that she is also kind of judging Harden for being a man whore. Like, he slept around quite a lot, and she always thinks that he's going to cheat on her like any moment. Like, he just said like, oh my god, I love you so much and you are really special to me, you're not like the other girls. And then she's like, oh well, he didn't invite me to the party, so he probably is going to make up with Molly. And I'm like, wow, that's like, why are you thinking that? Like, why are you together with him when you always have the fear of him cheating on you? Um, the worst thing is that she's sometimes as bad as him. Like, for example, with Zed, he's like a friend of Harden's, but not really. They have this really weird friendship in general. That's, I don't know. I mean, they bet about a girl's virginity, so that's kind of messed up in my opinion. But in general, like, I don't know, he's weird, and Tessa met him like a few times, and then they playing Truth or Dare, because they always are playing Truth or Dare at these weird parties. But then suddenly she looks at Zed, and I think she's broken up with Harden at that moment. Maybe she's still with Noah, but like, who cares about Noah? But she's like, oh well, he's like really hot, and I'm like, great for you. But like, suddenly she's like, oh, I'm going to make stuff with him, and I don't know if she wants to make Harden jealous, but she's like, well, I go for it. And it's just like so obnoxious of her, and so vain of like seeing him as this sexy guy and just thinking, well, then I'm going for him if Harden doesn't want me, and he has Molly anyway, so I'm having that. And it's just so ridiculous. Well, now we're going to talk about my bae, Harden. Like, love him so much. Not. He's just really bad. Like, sometimes I actually felt bad for him, because Tessa was always so surprised that he acted that way, and it was actually quite predictable. So, for example, he says, I don't want to be in a relationship. And then she's like super hurt by him when he says, I don't want to be in a relationship, for like the 10th time. And she was like actually really surprised at that. So, like, in that part, I was actually feeling really bad for Harden, because he actually made his point quite early in the book. And it's not like no surprise to me that he acts this way. But yeah, let's get on to him. So he's like the rudest person I have ever met, like in a book. At first I thought like, okay, maybe he's just shy or doesn't really know how to act around people, but like everybody in the book says, oh yeah, that's typical Harden, he's just really rude to everyone. And I think that's just such a bad character trait. Like, there's no excuse for that. He's just, I don't know, always glaring at people, always, I don't know, making jokes on their behalf and that kind of stuff. And I don't know, that's just not really cool. And he's kind of mood swingy. He is kind of nice in one moment, then suddenly he bursts out in some way. Ooh. And then suddenly he bursts out in some way. But I guess his most frequent character traits are definitely aggressive, abusing, controlling, and manipulative. So, for example, he and he's like really weird. He's this kind of like insta love guy. Like, this, like, their relationship is really insta love. Like, this happens over like the span of like 2 months or like 3 months, and I feel like in the first month they didn't really interact that much, except for like really hating each other. It wasn't even like this bickering kind of thing. It was just plain on hating. But he is this guy who has like all these problems and is really brooding, and then Tessa comes into his life and suddenly she changes him because she's special, like she's not like the others, and he can actually sleep around her without having nightmares of his like awful childhood past. And I mean, like, they're actually people having like really bad childhoods, and I feel like Todd kind of just uses this as a plot device for him to have reason to be that asshole that he is, and that really pisses me off. So again, being back to controlling, he actually plans on moving in with Tessa, like, I don't know, halfway through the book, because her mom doesn't approve of their relationship, and she doesn't know how she can afford housing. So he's like, oh yeah, let's move in together, and he's controlling so much about this process of moving in together. She's not even sure, and he's like, I have this flat, and if you say so tomorrow we can move in there, but I can't wait forever. And then they actually look at the flat, and she's like, oh, I really like this, let's do this. And he's like, yeah, I knew you would do that because I brought all of your belongings from your room. Like, what? He actually, I don't know, he actually moved her stuff from her room into their new apartment before she even agreed to this. And he is also like really sensible around the topic of Noah. So, for example, after they finally broke up for real, Noah phones her at some kind of point in the book, and Hardin freaks out, and he's like, I'm not allowing you to talk to Noah, and you're going to tell him that you never going to talk to him again. And also, like, Tessa gets this internship through Hardin's dad, but actually Hardin wants to get her that internship, so he was actually already pissed at that. So she has this internship at this really great publishing company. Like, what a surprise, because they all have this really great connections to like really like top publishing houses. This kind of reminds me of like 50 Shades. I don't know, isn't that about publishing as well? Whatever, but he knows the boss of Tessa really great, so he's like, oh yeah, I talked to him and you can leave. And it's just like, okay, but maybe she wanted to stay, I don't know. And then he got this really kind of manipulative, emotional abuse kind of thing going on. For example, in their new flat, they actually have this agreement that he pays everything except for internet and groceries, something like that, like really random stuff. So Tessa's like, well, I want to pay for something at least, and they agree on like, I don't know, electricity and groceries, whatever. But like, he's paying like most of the bills. So he actually says at one point, in case you forgot, I'm the one paying the bills here, so if anyone is going to leave, it will be you. And this is just so bad. He has so much on her, like from a really early point on in their relationship, which is just so bad. Like, and he manipulates her with this basically. And I don't know, he even like took her car and got it repainted without her consent. Like, he does so many stuff, and he actually thinks that's romantic, but I don't see the romantic side on it. One part that really bothered me was like quite like during the end, in chapter 94, where he actually says, we got to get you on birth control so you can stop using these. I want to be able to fear you, like, or I want to really be able to fear you. And it's just like, it's her choice if she wants to get on birth control and like pump hormones into her body that like aren't supposed to be there. So it's like a mutual decision that you're making, like on what kind of like birth control or contraception you want to be. So it's just so messed up that she says this to her and she just accepts it. And that's like a huge problem with Tessa, that she actually accepts all of his demanding. And another side for a kind of like unhealthy character trait of his is that he is like very possessive. So I feel like, I mean, like, Tessa doesn't really seem to mind that much, to be honest, but like at first she has these friends friends in like Steph and London, and I think like she still has contact with London but not with Steph, because since she moved out of the dorm, because she moved in with Hardin, she hasn't really kept contact. And at one point, Nate teases Tessa and says, where has Hardin been hiding you? And I was like, well, that's kind of true, isn't it? Like, they are kind of hiding in their flat that they got after they dated for like a month, and they just spending time together. Like, it's the worst. And Tessa's actually really really whiny about not spending time with Harden. It's just so bad. Like, she is kind of pathetic. Like, after he leaves, she just can't have an evening to herself without thinking about him all the time. And except when he has to do something, because he has like loads of secrets, and it's just so messed up that like he had this bet with Zed in the first place about like Tessa's virginity. But my problem is that I would have thought that like after he fell for Tessa, he would actually like stop this bet. But actually, after he took Tessa's virginity, well, I wouldn't say took, because it was actually consensual. He actually had her sheets, which are bloody, and he took it in his trunk, and he actually showed it to Zed as a kind of proof that he actually de-virginized Tessa. And this is just, ooh, you should not do that. Like, if you really love her, you should have ended this bed, or you should have just lied about it. Or this is just like the most humiliating thing that you could do to Tessa. It's just so not okay to do that, and it's just really inappropriate, and it really frustrates me. So about other characters, there are a few. Like, most of the side characters didn't really have a personality themselves. They were kind of flat. Like, we had Steph and Molly, who were slutty. We had like Zed and all his friends, who were like really badass and party guys. And then we have like Landon, who was like the good guy. And like, I don't know, this family of Hardens and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't like they really had like a deep personality to them. Which two personality kind of really bothered me were Noah's and Tessa's moms, because they were just so bad. Like, Noah was kind of cute, but he had this really weird relationship with Tessa's mom, and I think that was just really fucked up. Like, he told Tessa's mom everything, like, about her, about their relationship, about, like, Tessa calls him drunk and is like, oh yeah, I went to this party, it was a mistake, whatever. And the first thing he does is telling that Tessa's mom, and I think that's really fucked up. And he actually lets her command him around. So I don't know how to describe this, but for example, they walk into a room and he actually follows her like, I don't know, a puppy, and it's just so weird. And Tessa's mom is just the worst. Like, she's like such a cliche character who's like the strict mom who, I don't know, it just really frustrated. She really reminded me of a lot of characters out of other Wattpad stories and fanfics who were like the strict parents. She was really flat for me. I was like, okay, she's a single mom and she wanted better for her daughter, but she's just as judgmental as Tessa, and it's the worst. The only time I actually agreed with her was when she said, oh, Teresa, my naive Teresa, you have no idea what love is. And I was like, yeah, because Tessa thinks that what she has with Harden is love and it's beautiful, and it's not. So that was the only time. So a thing about the characters in general that I think is so ridiculous are their names. Because, you know, it's a 1D fanfic. And I mean, like, in 50 Shades, you kind of knew that it's a Twilight fanfiction, but like, he's called Christian, he's not called Edward. It's not like you can. It seems like it was edited, so it's actually a standalone story. Like, for Todd to change the story and not for it to be a 1D fanfic, she had to rename the characters. But instead of like having like actual, I don't know, coming up with like, I don't know, her own names. While she did come up with names, she actually stuck to the name pattern. Like it's just so frustrating. Like Harden Scott, Harry Styles, it has the same initials and the same syllables. Same thing goes for Nate and Niall, and Zed and Zayn. And I think there's this other guy who's supposed to be either Louis or Liam, but I'm not sure who. Like, that character was that flat and that unimportant that I didn't even know which 1D character it actually was. But I think that's just so unoriginal. Like, it really bothered me because let your story be original. Like, of course, it's based off like 1D members, but for it to be actually published, you should have come up with something that's not like 1D, but actually not 1D. Like, and that kind of bothered me. So to kind of wrap this up, I hope I kind of brought some kind of structure into my thoughts. I'm not sure if that actually happened, but in general this book was really bad because first it wasn't written like really good, it wasn't written outstandingly, and it actually had some really, I don't know, childish sentences, not really original structure whatsoever. And then secondly, we just have the two worst main characters I ever came across. And they both have the most unhealthy relationship of all times. And it's just so bad. Like, Tessa always thinks that Harden is putting on an act and actually hating her and cheating on her all the time. We have Harden, who's like really controlling and doesn't want to admit that he has actual feelings for Tessa, which I'm not really sure about because he's such a rude person. Like, I'm not sure if he actually can have feelings. I don't know. But I don't know, they really seem to deserve each other, so good for them. I won't be continuing this story, but it was really fun, kind of, I don't know, hating it. And yes, like, subscribe, discuss with me. Like, maybe you have like really revolutionary thoughts about the story, and maybe you can contribute something to the discussion. I actually saw some like rant reviews about this on YouTube. I'm not sure if they actually said the same thing as I have, but I want to contribute to this community. So see you.